Hey everybody, welcome back to Talking Story with Professor V, where we discuss the history, traditions, and techniques of Kajukenbo. Today I'd like to talk to you about Kajukenbo and the law. We teach our students, many techniques in the art, where we strikes are to the eyes, throat, groin, teach even how to break arms. And do we ever teach them, though, what happens if they do that? I think this is something that's maybe not taught enough in the dojos. So today I want to talk to you about the top 10 things that you should know before using the art on the street. Number one, the ramifications of using the art on the street. Been a law enforcement officer in 3 different states. In the state of Florida, in the 5th Judicial Circuit, I am considered a blunt trauma expert, which means I can give my opinion in the court and they will hear it. The ramifications can be something as simple as a lot of time taken away from yourself trying to explain your actions, from having to pay for medical bills to time in prison if you do the wrong things out there on the street. So there are going to be ramifications. Somebody's going to judge you. So you have to understand that first. There will be. And if you made the wrong decisions, they could be severe. I've made many arrests on assault and battery charges. And I can tell you that several times, one of them was either arrested or both were arrested. The person that was attacked and the person that attacked him. You say, well, how can that happen? Well, it's because there's situations that happen during the altercation that caused both of them to have broken the law. Number 2, assault and ag assault. Assault basically is the threat to a person with the immediate ability to carry it out. Meaning that if I was in Ohio and I called up someone in Florida and told them I was going to beat their ass, that would not be an assault because I don't have the immediate ability to carry it out. But if I'm standing directly in front of you and I say it, that might be considered an assault. Aggravated assault is when you use a weapon. So if you're armed with a weapon and you give a threat and you have the immediate ability to carry it out, that would be considered an ag assault. Number 3, battery, ag battery. Battery is simply the unwanted touch of one person to another. A poke to the chest, a push. And it doesn't have to be even mean to hurt the person. It could be a grab to sturdy them or to guide them in a certain way, and it can be considered an assault if the person does not want it. So basically, you keep your hands off people unless you absolutely have to put them hands on. So that would be a battery, an unwanted touch. Of course, a punch, kick would be battery. What is an ag battery? An ag battery is a couple things. Ag battery would be if I hit you with a weapon. Let's say I hit you with a stick. That would be an ag battery. So if a weapon's involved, it would be ag battery. Ag battery with my hands would be if I hit you and the result was permanent disfigurement or serious physical harm. So let's say that I hit you and I cut your eye or left a permanent scar. That could be considered ag battery with my hands. Also, the severeness of the beating. If I hit you so hard and so many times that I just really put you in a bad way and maybe hospitalized you with concussions or fractures, that can be considered ag battery. Weapon, the seriousness, permanent disfigurement, those things are ag battery. Now, also, if it's dealing with a female and she's pregnant, that would be considered ag battery. Now, again, all this will be judged by the courts, and the lawyers will get together and the judges, and they'll decide whether this was ag battery, wasn't ag battery, if this was simple battery. Simple battery would be a slap or something that was not permanent disfigurement, maybe not even bleeding, or just a touch. That would be simple battery. Ag battery, again, when you turn it up. Weapon, pregnant, severity of the injuries. That would be. So now you have assault and you have battery. Two different things. Number 4, stand your ground law. We have it here in Florida. You need to find out in your state if you have it. Stand your ground law means I do not have to retreat if I'm confronted with an assailant. In some states, they want you to try to retreat first. And you can only defend yourself if you can't do that. But in Florida, we have the stand your ground law, which I can use all the way up to deadly force if I'm being presented with that type of attack. So I can use up to deadly force, and I don't have to retreat. That makes a difference on if you're going to use this art, when to use it and when not to use it. But in Florida, we can stand our ground. If the guy makes an effort, we can use what we need to do to stop the person. So check your state, see if you have it. The next thing, number 5, is the castle law. See if you have that. Castle law, and I'm making this simple, but the castle law basically is my home, my curtilage, and even my vehicle can be considered involved in the castle law, which means I have a right to protect my home, my curtilage, up to deadly force without being in fear that I committed a crime. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that if I commit a crime while I'm doing this, I'm still can be arrested for that. Castle law means that if you defend yourself, but if you defend yourself and it's deemed proper or reasonable by the courts, then you're going to be okay. But there are people who have done things in their home, defending their home, and have been arrested for it because of circumstances that they have done. Number 6, victim or assailant. Okay, hopefully you're being taught that if you're being attacked, you're the victim. But there's times in a fight where you can change from the victim to the assailant. Perfect example, you've seen in the UFC where somebody gets hit and he gets starched and he goes to the ground. And you can see him, he's stiff as a board, and his eyes are rolling back in his head, and the other guy jumps down and hits him 2 or 3 times. The ref pulls him off. With all the phones out there, the iPhones and everything, there's a good chance that this fight's going to be taped or videoed. And this could come back to haunt you if you did something like that, like I just explained. There's a time where the person is no longer a threat. If the fight goes your way, he attacks you, you try to tell him, look, I don't want to fight, but he attacks you, you give him 1 shot, he goes down, or maybe you've given him several shots, and he goes down, he's no longer the threat, and you continue to stand over top of him and just paste him. There's a good chance that that's going to be turned around. They're going to say, well, wait a minute, he was helpless on the ground. The fight was basically over. He was no longer a threat, and you attacked him. So you got to be careful with that, because we teach in Kajukenbo, right? We teach that follow up, and that's good, but you got to know when to quit. You got to know what shape your opponent's in, or I should say opponent, your attacker's in. So you don't want to become the assailant. You want to stay the victim. Even though you win, you want to stay the victim. So knowing when to stop. We have in law enforcement, we have a use of force matrix. And basically what it is, if I'm, let's just put it to the street part. If the attacker comes at me and I tell him, look, I don't want to fight, I don't want to fight. I'm still at a level where I'm worried that, this guy wants to throw hands. So I'm kind of worried, and I'm watching, and there's always that little feeling that, could something happen? Could I get hurt? And then if they escalate up higher, I'm able to escalate up higher. So in law enforcement, if I'm met with a certain type of force, I'm able to go above that. And if they escalate, I can escalate. But if they go down, I have to go down. So I can't get up to deadly force and just stay at deadly force. Just because deadly force was used against me, I can't just stay at deadly force. Once I take this guy down, that'd be like in a gunfight. The guy points a gun, I shoot him, he goes down, I go over top of him and fire all my remaining rounds in his face. It might be people out there that's going to say, well, yeah, this guy's in my house, and that's cool. Yeah, I can see where might be people think about that the person's tried to kill their family, and that's fine. I'm just telling you what the court's going to look at. They're going to twist that all around, and they're going to make it look to the point where you now into this person's life. Maybe he was shot in the chest, and you into his life because you fired 5 rounds in his face. You just got to be careful letting your anger or your emotions get involved, which is it's hard not to do that, especially when somebody's trying to take your life. But you have to be calm. I mean, we're in law enforcement, especially in SWAT, we're taught to not let our emotions get involved, to work a plan. I mean, we have special training things we do. If A happens, we do B, and we train it so much that's what we do. And when bullets are flying or whatever, you stay in focus. You're going with your training. That's what keeps you alive. So the same thing goes on the street. You got to be trained to do things a certain way, and you got to be able to know when that person is incapacitated, is no longer a threat. Because if you take it to a certain level, you could be having to answer for that. And that number 7, saying goes right in line with that. Knowing when to quit. Knowing when to quit. Know when it's over. And you may have to even call 911, even get an ambulance there, and get some help, medical help. Maybe even for yourself. I mean, fights don't always go where one person's unscathed. A lot of times both people are hurt. I know we train for this, we train for that, but anything happens in a street fight. Nothing's ever goes the way you want it to. As a cop, I've made many forcible arrests, where we've done training. Well, you do this, you do that. It's like you guys do in class. But it never goes the way you want it to. There's always, you got the environment involved. You have cars, you have slippery grass, you got wet pavement. Things just don't go the way you always want them to. But you have to plan for that. That's where your training comes in the dojo, making it street ready. Number 8. Armed or unarmed assailant. That makes a big difference, because if your assailant is armed, that enables you to up your escalation. So if a person who attacks with a club, you're able to go up to deadly force yourself. He's using deadly force against you. You can use deadly force against him to defend yourself. So if the person is armed or unarmed, it makes a difference. on how you're going to respond to that. And maybe people say, well, you know what, that's a lot to think about. But I can tell you it can be done. As a cop, I've done it for many years. With training, the proper training and your proper mindset, it can be done. You can do the right thing. You can make split second decisions in a matter of life and death. We've done it all the time. Cops do that out there all the time. And this is not a this is not a cop pro channel, even though I was a cop. This is about Kajukenbo. I don't want the Kajukenbo boys out there going to jail. So if the person is armed, you automatically you can escalate up. So if you're a Kali student or arnist or whatever, and you got sticks in the club, and the guy comes walking up to you with a tire arm, you can get your sticks out. That'd be a perfect time to use your sticks in a street fight if they're in the car with you. But if the person's walking up and he's not armed, it's a different situation. So number 8, armed or unarmed of your assailant, makes a difference on how you escalate. And in some cases, if the person's armed, you might decide not to get out of your car. So there's a lot of decisions that's got to be made out there if you're involved in a confrontation or an attack on your body or your person. Number 9, using a weapon against an unarmed assailant. So it goes right back to what we just talked about in number 8. If an unarmed person comes up to you and you arm yourself, what have you just done? You're just now you're using a deadly weapon, whether it be a club, knife, sticks. You just armed yourself, and you're against an unarmed opponent, an unarmed. I keep saying opponent from all the fight, but unarmed assailant. So you're now up here on the use of force scale, and they're down here. So you're the victim. Now we say, well, what if I'm scared? What if I'm a female? Well, that's different. There are variable factors that come into play where a female or a smaller male might be able to get away with using deadly force against an unarmed assailant. But you have to know the difference in when you can and when you cannot. And a good example would be if you're a 30-year-old male and you're average build, and 4 guys walk up to you, to your car. You might be able to pull your gun to get them to back away, or show them that, look, I'm not gonna take a beating. I'm ready to defend myself. I want you to go away, even if you just show them the gun. But the point is, all the stars got to be aligned. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know when it's right, when it's wrong. And there's a lot of stuff that goes up and down very quickly. I mean, you can go from 0 to deadly force in a split second, and then back down just as quick. I've had it happen. So you have to know this stuff. You have to understand that. All right. So number 9, using a weapon against an unarmed assailant. You have to understand the difference what that is. Because when you arm yourself, you just went up here. And you have to be able to justify that. Number 10, knowing the law in your state. Very important. Look at your state laws. Hopefully your sensei may talk to your sensei about this. Maybe if he hasn't done it, maybe he'll go and do it. And you guys can sit down in class and talk about what you can and cannot do. I had a student one time who was a Kali person, and we were talking, and I told him, I said, you realize every time you pull those sticks, every time you use those sticks or those knives, you're deadly force. And you might even be, in some states, considered possibly murder if you're using a blunt weapon or a knife on a person, especially if they're unarmed. So you have to look at that. But know the laws in your state. Know what you can and cannot do. Pull them out. They're online. You can get them. And then you can just read them and put them to your art, what you do, and understand them. Also, your art can sometimes come back to hurt you. That's what I'm saying. Knowing the difference between assault and battery. I had a case where I went to a domestic violence call, and I had the guy was kind of intoxicated. He answered the door, and he had his right hand behind his right leg. I'm talking to him, and I asked him, can I see your hands? And he wouldn't do it. He kept telling me, I got something for you, cop. Things like that. So naturally, I'm thinking, well, this guy might have a knife back here or something. So as he's moving around, I see a butcher knife. So make a long story short, I end up arresting the guy. I get the knife away. I end up arresting the guy, and I charge him with domestic violence and aggravated assault on a police officer. We go to trial. The defense attorney brings it up that I'm a martial artist. I was pretty well known in the area. I was a martial artist, and I train in all this. I train in knife defense. I train in how to defend, and I've done it for many years. So how could I be scared? If I have all this training, how could I be scared? Well, common sense tells you anything can go wrong. So if I make one mistake and I misjudge this guy, I can end up seriously hurt or killed with a butcher knife that's 12 inches long. But the judge ruled in their favor. He said he agreed. They threw out the charge of aggravated assault on a police officer because he said, with all my training and my expertise, that's the problem with being in the newspaper and going to tournaments and doing stuff, that you have a tendency, sometimes people know you. So therefore, I was well known that I was this martial arts instructor. I had a school in town. So what did they do? They threw it out. They said I could not be afraid or scared, or that I felt my life was in fear. My life was in fear of being taken from me. Totally wrong. Totally bullshit. Of course, somebody's got a knife. Yeah, I have a gun, but I didn't have my gun out when I answered the door. I mean, I would have had to block everything and take the knife away. And anybody that's ever knows about real knife fighting, they'll tell you, you're going to get cut. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get cut. Or you're going to have some form of injury. It's very hard to defend against a knife. I'm not trying to say that martial arts can't do it, but all the guys know that it's very difficult. And you have to really practice, and you have to know what you're doing. And still then, you could be cut. So these are the things. So let's go over them again. Number 1, know the ramifications of what can happen if you do this, the legal ramifications. Number 2, assault and aggravated assault. Know the difference. Number 3, battery and ag battery. Know the difference. Number 4, stand your ground law. Check on. Do you guys have that? Number 5, castle law. Check that. See if you have it. Number 6, don't become the assailant. Stay the victim. Number 7, knowing when to quit. Knowing when the person is incapacitated and know when to quit. And quit. 8, armed or unarmed assailant. The difference between what you can do if the person's armed and what you cannot do. So it escalates way up there if the person's armed. So you can arm yourself. Number 9, using a weapon against an unarmed assailant. Knowing that you're the one that's escalated way up. So you have to have all the different things in line to be able to do that. Do you have the justification to go to that level of force? And last, know the laws in your state. Number 10, know them. And people, I can tell you this. I'm going to end it with this. When you're out there and you're defending yourself on the street, understand. Hopefully, it never happens, but understand that you're going to be judged. Every part of what you did is going to be scrutinized, and it's going to be looked at to see if you committed any crimes. I can tell you, I've done it. I know exactly what's going to happen when that happens. I know how the law enforcement officer is going to handle it. Some of them will handle it better than others, but it will happen. So are there other things to think about in the law? I could have added number 11 and said, understand that your training could be held against you in court, like I described. That could be number 11 if you wanted to do that. But I wanted to stay with just the top 10 that I thought was important. You Kajukenbo people, we talk about street. We're ready for the street. We train for the street. but you have to know what happens when you do that. So again, hit the subscribe button and like. I appreciate it. And I'll see you soon. So aloha.